Alrighty, gods at DigiGods.com. That's where you can email us, Voxboxes, emails, anything else. And by way of quick reminder, all the stuff we talk about in any given week, there are hyperlinks that take you to the Amazon pages. So go ahead to gods at DigiGods.com, or go to DigiGods.com to see all of the rundown of everything that we cover. And if you want, it'll take you to Amazon if you want to grab it and see more details. Mark, have you changed any of your Oscar predictions any?
No, I still think it's going to be Spotlight.
Yeah, I do too. Nothing seems to be changing that for me. I think it'll be Spotlight. But I do think Inarritu is going to win Best Director. I do. I don't think they're going to give it to Tom McCarthy. I think they'll give it to Inarritu. I think Tom McCarthy will win. I think their feeling is Tom McCarthy's going to win Screenplay and Best Picture because we've been splitting it a lot lately. The last 10 years there have been more director-picture splits than there were like in the preceding 40.
Well, the thing too is that I don't know that the Academy sees Spotlight as a directing achievement.
It's a writing and an acting achievement.
Which, by the way, everything is a directing achievement in a way. If you gave Spotlight to somebody else, it would be a different movie. But still, they look at it as like a writing achievement. And an ensemble acting achievement.
I think they feel that the challenge of directing that cast with that script probably does not compare to running around the Arctic with Leonardo DiCaprio eating livers. That just seems they probably look at that and just go and you know what that'll do? That will give Inarritu back-to-back Best Directing Oscars. Which has only happened once before. You know that. Joseph L. Mankiewicz won them back-to-back back in whatever it was, 50 and 51.
He would deserve it. I love that guy. And, there's so many great directors coming out of that part of the world. Everyone from Guillermo del Toro to Inarritu.
It's fantastic.
That part of the world is
really... There would be 3 straight Oscars for Mexican directors. 2 Mexican directors winning 3 consecutive Academy Awards.
Nothing wrong with that. It's great.
Pretty great. All right, you know what, Mark? We got Kidvid that I need to burn through because
I'm just going to sit here and surf the net while you do that.
You know what? We're switching it up a little bit with my daughter, and she's enjoying more sophisticated storytelling, and she's not watching Angry Birds. And the Angry Birds animated stuff, I have to admit, is better than I ever expected that it would be. And we have an Angry Birds feature film coming out.
Damn right.
But seriously, it still feels like they're just overextending the idea of a game concept. In any case, they've really just blown this thing out. I mean, you realize the company that created Angry Birds over in Finland or wherever, they were on the board. They were like bankrupt. They were ready to go under. They could not make money. They could not pay their people. They were almost ready to just completely collapse. They couldn't. They tried different games. Nothing was sticking. And they come up with Angry Birds, and now it is this like multi-billion-dollar enterprise with the stuffed animals and the cartoons.
Is the best.
It's insane.
Come on, Angry Birds, the best.
Well, anyway, we've got 4 different Angry Birds releases here. Actually, I'm sorry, 3 different Angry Birds releases. And there's Angry Birds Toons, Stella, which is just tweaked, and then Piggy Tales. You know what? The first season of Piggy Tales is probably the funniest, just because those stupid green pig heads make me laugh, and they're just so unhinged. It's just very, very strange, and it sort of goes completely over the top with to make fun of the pigs. I kind of enjoyed that. Angry Birds Toons is much more conventional with all the different bird types, and it's not CGI like looking. It's just kind of let's play with funny birds that make funny sounds. And then Stella is essentially more. It's a spin-off. That looks at this one particular bird, this little pink bird named Stella, and her whole world on this little island. I mean, it's all really, really just extending the franchise and pushing the film, which is probably going to make a stupid amount of money when it happens. And then we also have a couple other bird-oriented titles here. One is Little Rooster's Excellent Adventure. This is in both Spanish and in English, and it's just a CG animated bird story, and it's okay, I guess. It's there are a lot of these that just go straight to video, and this is perfectly fine. It was originally in Spanish, and it's, if you just want to see animated birds, you'll enjoy it. Same thing for Hatched, which is uses the voices of Sean Astin and Jeff Foxworthy to tell a story of this little bird that could, who just wants to be a pilot. Anyway, it's got some interesting voice work, and that's really all. That's all there is. I mean, it's got the only funny thing here, and this is a Chinese production, by the way. The only thing that's really interesting here is that they have some funny names like Cluck Norris and Tiny Schwarzenegger. Yeah, not working for you. Okay. Dogs. Got a couple with dogs. Wiener Dog Internationals and Army Dog. Both of them with that family-approved seal that will turn off most parents and make you run screaming the other direction. These are both live action, and all these dog-centric family live-action films are just sort of really uninteresting. The only thing that I can say that really, I mean, they feel just like horrendous rip-offs of old Disney movies. The only thing that I can say that make either of these interesting are some interesting casting choices. Casper Van Dien and his daughter Grace are an Army Dog. Isn't it funny how the guy from Starship Troopers has become like the Family Man guy? It's like Ice Cube.
I know.
Weird. And then
the doggy. He's so dumb. Look at him, stupid dog. He's the dumbest.
Mark, do you know who stars in Wiener Dog Internationals?
The dog?
Morgan Fairchild.
What is Morgan Fairchild going to do? She's like 60.
What has she ever done? She just sit there. Just look good. She looks great at 60.
No, she doesn't.
She does.
There is no 60-year-old. I mean, you can look good for your age, but if you're 60 years old, you are not going to want to. There's nobody under the age of 40 who will sleep with a 60-year-old.
I'll find someone. I will.
I mean, some people are into like that old woman stuff. I don't get it.
You're not into gilfs? No.
Oh, is that a thing? Grandmothers, I'd like to.
No, I don't know. It just sounds funny. The Giant King, CGI animated, basically kind of a. It's sort of I don't want to say the Iron Giant-ish, but it kind of shoots for being a little bit Iron Giant-ish. But it's much more over the top. It's more in the vein of Robots. Remember the really bad animated film Robots? You don't remember Robots?
Maybe.
I think it was a DreamWorks thing. Was it a DreamWorks thing?
Robots? Oh, I do remember that. There was like a factory that made the robots or something.
Terrible. Yeah. Terrible. Anyway, this has a similar look to that, and it's okay. It's from Lionsgate. It's it's too long. It is way too long, but it's got some good voice casting, and Russell Peters is always really funny. I just love Russell Peters. He's really good. But other than that, it's just passing the time for your kids. A couple of new Power Rangers titles. Power Rangers Time Force, the complete series, which is horrendous, and then Power Rangers Dino Charge Unleashed, which is modestly engaging for kids, probably only because it has a whole dinosaur element to it. But otherwise, it's exactly the same stuff. They just modify the costumes a little bit, and these things just keep getting cranked out. And for some reason, Haim Saban just keeps making ungodly amounts of money. It's off of one concept. It's just strange. And there's a new Power Rangers movie, feature film. They're doing another feature film.
Yeah, with Elizabeth Banks as the villain.
Crazy. Nuts. A bunch of Nickelodeon stuff. Whiskers and Paws, which is a compilation disc that they release every so often. It's got little bits from all their, a lot of their favorite shows, like their most popular shows like Blue's Clues and Bubble Guppies and Dora and Her Friends. And, if you watch any of that stuff like I do. Shimmer and Shine is one of their new shows, and we're not too fond of this. Essentially, these are a couple of little genie girls, one of them who is very Caucasian and the other one who looks very Middle Eastern, and clearly it's all sort of they couldn't have two that were white and two that were Middle Eastern looking because they would have caught flack either way. So they're trying to make it this is like we're into genie diversity now, and they have the big heads and the big eyes, like all that anime-inspired stuff that's on kids' television these days, like the Bubble Guppies. And, they're learning to be genies. It's the Princess Industrial Complex extended into the genie world. It doesn't really work for me. Rev Up and Roar is a disc of Blaze and the Monster Machines. We're not really into the talking cars. I have a little girl who is much more interested in Minnie and Mickey. which we will get to shortly. Dora and Her Friends Season 1, Temporada Uno, which means Season 1, I guess, in Spanish. Dora is, of course, growing up, so she's in a tween phase now with this show, and we scrupulously do not let my daughter watch this because she's not old enough, and it will just inspire her to be more like Dora, and we prefer Peppa Pig. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Revenge, more fun turtle animation, not that great. I'm totally over this turtle thing. And by the way, they're tortoises. You realize that. They're not really Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. They're tortoises.
But Teenage Mutant Ninja Tortoises does not roll off the tongue as well.
Well, I'll tell you what it rolls off. There's a joke
Your
there.
Pants?
I don't know. I didn't know where that joke was going. A bunch of PBS Kids stuff. Before we kind of roll to the end of this, PBS Kids Super Y, which we watch a lot. This is really fun. It teaches kids to read and to spell, and it's the animation used to annoy me. They also have big heads and big eyes, but I actually think this is really, really great as a reading tool. This is 3 Billy Goats Gruff. Which my daughter knows very, very well. And to put that into a context with these kids who turn into superheroes and teach you how to read and do this fun little dance, it's great. Caillou Learns to Share, the latest collection of Caillou episodes, 7 stories. Caillou drives us crazy, but apparently they've tested it and found that this Canadian-produced show actually has some kind of it teaches kids to learn or something. They focus better. I don't know. There's something about Caillou. It's so grating. Caillou freaks me out. He's endlessly bald, but whatever. The Wild Kratts, Australian Adventures. The Wild Kratts is another PBS Kids show. It's okay. If your kids know what koalas are, then they'll probably enjoy this one. We took my daughter to the San Diego Zoo. She saw koalas for the first time, so this had, the whole kangaroo koala thing had a little bit of resonance for her, but otherwise she doesn't really particularly care for it. We have 4 classic episodes of Reading Rainbow with LeVar Burton.
Okay, wait, no one cares about that.
Okay.
Read off my TV screen, off my computer screen, what 2 Amazon Blu-ray purchases are on their way to me right now.
What's on you? Star Trek The Next Generation Motion Picture Collection.
Right.
Okay. Wow, look at that. Okay.
And
Star Trek The Next Generation complete seasons 1 through 7.
the whole series, UK.
Yeah. Wow, the UK series.
Because it's you know what, the whole series is not available on Blu-ray.
I know.
In the States.
They're releasing them just one at a time, like every 7 or 8 months.
But in the UK,
nice.
Region free, you get the whole thing, 41 discs.
Wow.
Next Generation complete series. That is on my way to me now. You know
Well
why?
done. Why?
Because I waste my money on a bunch of crap.
There you go. All right.
And by the way, the Star Trek Motion Picture Collection, the only decent film is First Contact, which is a good film, regardless of the fact that it's because you know what, you like all the Star Trek everybody hates, and you hate all the Star Trek everybody likes.
Wouldn't it be awesome if they put me in charge of the whole franchise at Paramount?
You know what? You would just become Gene Roddenberry. You would have done Roddenberry's script about going back in time to prevent the JFK assassination. He wanted to do that for decades.
I know. No, I would have some really good ideas. But what I would do first thing, I would round up all of the best science fiction writers and have them start writing scripts.
Well, that's what the show did. The original show did that.
Yeah, I know. That's what they should do again. Robert Bloch and David Gerrold and Harlan Ellison. For sure, man. Do that. Last 3 from PBS Kids. Different Dinosaurs Are Different. Installation of Dinosaur Train, which is actually really fun. It's grown on me like fungus. I kind of enjoy Dinosaur Train now for some stupid, nutty reason. It's from the Henson people. Daniel Tiger's Neighborhood, Would You Be Mine? Not so much. That's a little too cloying. And then Be My Valentine, Word World, Building Readers is good, but I still prefer the Super Y. I do for reading. Now that I'm in this and I see how she responds, yeah, Super Y is better. And this is great. A 4-volume set from Facets Kids. Facets, is an art house, basically an art house distributor. They release a lot of foreign stuff and docs and real specialty stuff. But they're doing some really interesting stuff with kids. They've got this 4-volume set, Facets Kids. And what this basically is a way of teaching your children, helping them sort of. It's basically very professionally oriented developmental stuff. Volume 1 is The Power of Imagination. 2 is Embracing Differences. 3 is Family and Community. 4 is Overcoming Obstacles. Really helping parents be able to teach kids and learn how to develop and connect to the world without losing touch with being kids. And there are essentially, this comes from all over the world. It's a fascinating concept. What they've done here, they've gone all over the world, and they find these interesting little films that sort of speak to these developmental issues. These short films, basically designed for developmental purposes from all over the world. So you're using like foreign films to teach your children, and you're using them to teach them certain concepts. And there's a lot of, every continent is represented here. There's stuff from United Arab Emirates and from Singapore and all over Europe, and even stuff from the United States. And it's really great. They're cool little movies that you can watch with your kids, and you don't feel like you're watching something that's talking down to your kids or down to you, or that's talking up to your kids. It's really kind of it's a cool concept. So I think people who want a sophisticated way of kind of coaxing their children through a lot of issues and developmental issues, and who want to be able to do it in a sophisticated kind of art house foreign film way, like I would, I think it's a great thing. So Facet's Kids, 4 volumes, really cool. All right, Mark, let's move into what do we want to do next?
I don't know.
We got television. We've got
your show.
Let's do new
movies.
Let's do new movies. Let's do
new movies.
Let's do new movies.
Let's start with we'll do Steve Jobs in a second, but now let's start with Trumbo. Trumbo does the amazing trick of being the story of an amazing screenwriter that is so pedestrianly written that I just think this thing was basically fine. It is breezy and light and pedestrian, and I just felt like this thing did not even remotely honor the fact that Trumbo was one of the best screenwriters of all time. Did you see this movie?
I don't like it.
I feel like everybody's Bryan Cranston, who was nominated for an Oscar because people like him. He's very well liked, but to me, he just plays dress up. I just feel this thing is like, and Jay Roach is just not, the guy's got no depth to him. Jay Roach is just an on the nose kind of a surface guy.
It's like they made this not because they wanted to probe the man and his contradictions and his talents. And get inside his head and his very interesting life, but it's like they made it because they're like, he's a funny guy. He's really quippy. He's kind of like the Hunter S. Thompson of communist screenwriters, communist blacklisted screenwriters. So they basically have him do a Hunter S. Thompson impersonation, which is not who Trumbo was. And then it's a little too polemical. It's a little too on the nose about the blacklist era and all that, which frankly I think is interesting contrast to the new Coen Brothers film, Hail Caesar. But
that is true.
Anyway,
by the way, John Goodman, only funny thing in it.
Yeah,
John Goodman, hilarious. Anyway, Trumbo, not a fan. I am a fan, however, of Steve Jobs. In fact, I might be one of the only ones. That's not true.
No, I liked it. I didn't love it. I think it's very theatrical. I was very aware of the fact that the whole thing.
But that was the point. All these look. You can't do a movie where Michael Fassbender and Kate Winslet are having a conversation in a hallway, and projected against the hallway are like these images that get you from one point of time to the next point of time, without knowing that yes, we are doing something theatrical.
But it's also there was something the artifice of it. And for those who don't know, this takes place what is it? 4 launches,
3 launches,
3 product launches. So it's essentially 3 very long, elaborate scene sequences. And there's a little bit of flashback material in it, but not much. But for the most part, it's built as 3 product launches over the lifetime of Apple Computer and Steve Jobs himself. And the fact that at each one of these launches, the same collection of characters and life issues and conflicts all just kind of collapse on him again. The daughter thing and the Wozniak stuff and
people criticize the movie for that, but that was it's a play. It's just a theater play.
That's the thing.
That's okay.
I think people didn't want a theater play, and I accept it for what it is. I think it's an interesting writing experiment. I think it. But I don't think it's the definitive biopic that people were hoping for. That's the.
But if people wanted a cradle to grave type story, that is not this. This is very impressionistic.
Yeah, that's it. It's impressionistic.
But that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that because because Jobs himself had so many contradictions and so many different conflicts were coming at him from so many different directions, including himself. That really, I found that their approach was very interesting.
Do you think it's too soon? Because it actually made about the same amount of money as the Ashton Kutcher film, which I think is just humiliating.
That is humiliating. You know, well, because there was a lot of Monday morning quarterbacking after that, and I guess the idea was that they should have platformed it and not just thrown it out there in 3,000 theaters.
They should have.
You know, but that does not make it's beautifully edited. Yeah. It's got a great score. Fassbender is, I'll always wonder what Christian Bale would have done with it. I think Fassbender winds up doing a great impersonation more than he does really embody the man.
Yeah.
But otherwise, look, it's an Aaron Sorkin script. That means that you're going to get just so many juicy one-liners, so much interesting diving into the guy's psyche.
Yeah.
You really cannot beat any. I'll take the worst Aaron Sorkin script over the best script of anybody else.
And don't you think Catherine Waterston is becoming one hell of an actress?
She's awesome.
She is really. She is killing it.
And she's going to star in. She's starring in the Ridley Scott's Alien.
I know.
Prometheus sequel.
That apple fell right next to the tree.
I know.
And that really.
By the way, she's kind of hot.
Yeah.
She was in Inherent Vice.
Yeah. She's great. She's terrific.
Yep. Anyway, Steve Jobs. Great looking Blu-ray. And bonus features are okay. There's a feature commentary, which is pretty enlightening, and there's a making of piece, which was like okay. So I think I'm hoping that Steve Jobs, probably not, at some point will get reconsidered, because I do think it's a terrific film.
Yeah, I agree.
And a film, by the way, that only has see that still here. I'm showing something to wait. See that shot there?
Yeah.
There's only like 2 exteriors in the entire film.
I know.
Which I thought was so interesting.
Yeah.
The whole movie literally is just a bunch of interiors.
Yeah. But those exteriors open it up in a way that it desperately needed to be opened up.
But the thing is that one of the exteriors was like the last scene of the film, so it's kind of like it shows that now his perspective has opened a lot.
Yes, very true. I'm glad you read that. You're very film criticky, very film criticky of you. We got a thing from Welgo here. A couple other new movies. Estranged, which is this is the people who made Insidious, and it's just another one of these relatively well done but still kind of predictable horror thrillers. This is about a woman in a wheelchair who's got complete amnesia as to who she was and how she got there, and nobody's really telling her what the real story is. And then of course over the course of the film everything kind of gets revealed, and it's not nearly as interesting as you were hoping that it might be. The only interesting thing about the Jackie Earle Haley directed Criminal Activities, which is not bad, by the way. I'm thrilled that Jackie Earle Haley is directing, and it could not happen to a better and nicer guy. This is essentially a very small actor's piece about 4 guys who find out that their business funding came from a gangster, and how that sort of affects them. I mean, it's a little Reservoir Dogsy in some respect, but the only thing that's really interesting here is that number one, it stars John Travolta, Michael Pitt, and Dan Stevens. The only thing that's interesting is that number one, Travolta is really good again, which I really didn't expect, because he's kind of been just phoning it in for a while. He's really good again. But the other thing is that Dan Stevens, utterly unrecognizable. Dan Stevens, who, of course, was on the first few seasons of Downton Abbey. Totally unrecognizable. Unrecognizable.
You know what? Having not seen Downton Abbey, he could walk down the street and would also be unrecognizable to me.
And, of course, Michael Pitt, every time I see him, my wife worked on a film that Michael Pitt was in, so I was exposed daily to the drama of a Michael Pitt film, and I just can't see him in a movie anymore without flashing back to all of that. So
Michael Pitt, of course, is Brad Pitt's daughter. Who would believe that?
That was just so not funny. All right, a little bit of television action. I'm going to do something horrible and something great. Something horrible is The Brady Kids, the complete animated series. What? Okay, Mark, I want to just the only thing. Okay, do you remember The Brady Kids, the animated show?
Vaguely.
Okay. I just want to point out that this is, first of all, apart from being one of the most ridiculous animated shows of all time, ran in the early 70s for just one season, 22 episodes. Truly insane. What they basically do is they take the kids from the Brady Bunch and they have them actually do their own voices in this weird kind of Josie and the Pussycats filmation kind of animated show that was just so misbegotten. It's absolutely beyond belief. But what I find fascinating is how they expect this thing to actually generate any kind of nostalgia with the artwork that they have on the cover. They basically show them playing like a band, so it looks like something from the Archies or Josie and the Pussycats, or the like an animated Partridge Family. But Mark, what is dancing with them as they play? What do we have on the cover of this?
Oh, pandas!
2 panda bears and a monkey.
They're so dumb.
That is so surreal. That's like
the best.
That's the kind of thing that would give Salvador Dali a stroke. It's just surreal. Dancing pandas. We saw pandas when we went to the San Diego Zoo. They're really hard to see because they hide.
Yeah, you know why? Because they're at the San Diego Zoo instead of living out in the wherever the pandas live.
They breed them there. They're trying to help them, survive.
Ooh, sweet panda sex.
And then 12 Monkeys season 1, which I cannot recommend highly enough. I know a lot of people are like, oh, 12 Monkeys. How do you turn it into a show? You know what? It's a great show. Absolutely fantastic show. I am, of course, incredibly biased because the showrunner for this season, who has since moved on to a new show, which we will cover when the time comes. But the showrunner for this show, Natalie Chaidez, formerly a writer on a lot of great shows like New York Undercover and Heroes and many others. And Natalie, also one of my very oldest and dearest friends. We went to film school together, and actually the first person that I met in the bullpen when we were editing our film projects. And I am so elated for her success. And it's been a long time coming. So 12 Monkeys is, if you want to support great women showrunners, this is the way to do it. Because there's nothing about this show that says that this is basically a woman overseeing it. Nothing. It's just a great show from a great writer, and she really paid her dues, and I'm so happy for her. So anyway, 12 Monkeys season 1 really compares very favorably to the film. Opens up the world in really just incredibly compelling ways, does things that post-apocalyptic TV shows really do not do, and it takes chances, which is all I ever really ask of a TV show. Some great bonus features here: deleted scenes and a gag reel, cast auditions, a lot of stuff. It really it goes long and deep, and it is worth watching. A lot of actors in this cast are going to go on to bigger and better things. So 12 Monkeys season 1, Blu-ray and ultraviolet on this set. You can watch it anywhere, anytime.
The Beast is a show from 2009 that starred Patrick Swayze. And you know what? It's such a tragedy, obviously, that Swayze passed away at all. But the thing is, if you look at something like The Beast, which kind of came and went, you realize that the show, which is now on DVD, complete series, shows how if Swayze had survived, he would have gone on to do much better things than when he was younger. Because when he was younger, he was the super handsome guy who could dance and Dirty Dancing and whatnot. But when he was getting older and doing stuff like The Beast, you realize that he was getting some lines in his face. His hair was getting a little bit gray. There's some wrinkles going on there, and he was becoming more interesting. Like a lot of these young hunky actors, when they get older, they get more interesting. And I think here you definitely got that in The Beast, in which he plays an FBI agent, and he's got to train this rookie partner whose last name is Dove, which is just ridiculous. Because his name is Ellis Dove, because it's Dove because he's the innocent one.
At least his first name isn't Dove, and his middle name isn't SS, and his last name isn't Simmons. Be grateful for that.
I rue the day that because I took his class.
I know.
And he gave you this big.
I know.
Mimeograph. This is a long time ago. Like mimeograph Xeroxed, textbook. It was the Dove SS Simmons filmmaking school, and it had a yellow cover. It was all just paper texting and whatever.
Worst.
And I had it. And I threw it away. Anyway, so Dove is he might be a double agent. He's got to keep an eye on Patrick Swayze because he might be a bad guy. Anyway, The Beast. There's been a million shows like this, but if you want to see where Patrick Swayze's career was headed, which is way more interesting directions, you might want to check out The Beast. Now, there's also a show, a miniseries called Saints and Strangers, which really kind of came out of nowhere. And it's really good. It's about the Mayflower and the settling of the Mayflower settlers and the first Thanksgiving. What I liked about this is that it it sort of focused equally on the Pilgrims and the Native American tribes, and so it treated both with respect. I thought this is pretty well shot considering. There's a lot of political infighting and diplomacy, and there's a little bit of the ultra violence, which is always kind of perks you up, keeps you paying attention, and I think it's good. It's a good show. It's got an okay cast, includes Natasha McElhone, who had a moment there, like in the 10, 15 years ago, and Ron Livingston. For some reason, I cannot accept him as like some Mayflower settler. He's just too funny to me. He's too Office Space to be accepted as a Mayflower settler. But that said, you know what? National Geographic, they don't really do this stuff all that often, but they really kind of did a really good job. I give this like a really solid triple called Saints and Strangers. And there's some deleted scenes is the only special feature, which is like not even really worth checking out. But anyway, it's a good cast. It's drama done with intelligence. They don't downplay the difficulties. They don't downplay they're not politically correct. And so it's a pretty good show. I was very surprised. Saints and Strangers. Also, for some reason, we have the complete series of Bump in the Night. Now, Bump in the Night is a stop-motion animated show. And, I will always give stop-motion animation the benefit of the doubt because I think it's a great art. Very difficult, painstaking art. If you've seen Anomalisa, you can see where stop-motion animation can be taken to really artistic realms. But until then, we have Bump in the Night, which is like whatever. Yeah. Anyway, Rob Paulson is the main voice. The guy was in Animaniacs from you children of the 90s. You'll know what that's about. So Bump in the Night is like whatever, but if you love stop-motion, you know what? You can show it to your kids.
All right, so we got a couple from HBO here, a couple series they're both doing really well, and I can't say that I love either of them, but you know what? I'm not the audience for either of them. Girls, the complete fourth season on Blu-ray here and a digital HD. It's just this show is so insufferable to me. It's like let's do Sex in the City with 20-something women who have much less interesting lives and far less money and who are not really very bright, and that's really what this is. Oh, and a lot more nudity of people who really have no business taking their clothes off. I don't know. I don't get it. But you know what? Lena Dunham she's got talent. She's touched a nerve. She's become like a pop culture thing. So
thanks to us, by the way.
I know we gave her
New Generation.
So for Tiny Furniture, which she shot on a Canon HD SLR.
Is that right?
Yeah. So anyway, Adam Driver may be the only thing that really significantly broke out of this show because now he's the bad guy in Star Wars, and that would not have happened if not for this show. So it's done something, but anyway, this is trying to make the show grow up a little bit in its fourth season, jobs and relationships and yada yada, the usual. I mean, it's the same shtick. I kind of feel like this show is really about to run its course. First season of Togetherness, kind of similarly angsty, except this is dealing more with people as they're aging and getting into their 40s. And it's a good cast. This is from the Duplass brothers, which is why one of them, Mark Duplass, actually stars in the show. It's about a couple, Mark Duplass and Melanie Linsky, who are, they're kind of closing in on 40 and life and family and kids. It's just really, really difficult. And then adding insult to injury, a buddy of his moves in with them, played by Steve Zissis, and then her sister, played by Amanda Peet, also moves in with them. And it just creates all kinds of weird conflicts under one roof, which are very typically Duplass, which is, people in close quarters doing all kinds of talky, low-budgety, grainy drama, angsty stuff, and it's very Duplass. But obviously, it's got a little bit of a following. HBO wouldn't have greenlit it otherwise. So, Togetherness season 1. If you like the Duplass brothers, you'll probably love this. It's very.
I like the Duplass brothers, even though you hate all that mumblecore stuff, which they've since basically graduated from. But still,
no, this isn't really mumblecore. But it still has their whole vibe. Anyway. All right, Mark, let's let's go through some classic films. We have a couple of great criterions this week. I mean, amazing criterions, and you got to get them. You just got to get them. Actually, there's 3 total. One of them is not a foreign film. The other 2 are foreign films. So I was going to hold on to these for the foreign segment, but I'll do it all right now. They've been slowly releasing all of the Chaplin stuff, bit by bit by bit. And because all the Chaplin stuff is French owned. I don't know if anybody knew that, but Marin Carmitz, the French producer, whose company is MK2, which does a lot of great French films, they own the Chaplin library basically, and they licensed it to Warner Brothers years ago for that complete Chaplin series, which was fine. These are like the Chaplin feature films. And that stuff was great. I mean, it had a lot of great extras, but not Blu-ray. Now, the Blu-rays are all coming out through Criterion. MK2 has done that, and they have finally released the one that we've been waiting for, The Kid, with Jackie Coogan, looking absolutely just ridiculously cute and sympathetic. Jackie Coogan would go on to be not a very cute adult actor, but Chaplin and Coogan together in The Kid is one of the great pairings of all times. I mean, you're talking about an iconic figure, the Little Tramp, Chaplin's Little Tramp, who allows himself happily and willingly to be upstaged by this little kid, this little Depression-era looking kid, and it's one of the most magical films of all time. It might be, I mean, I have to really think about it, but it might be my second favorite Chaplin film next to City Lights. And it's very similar in many respects. This is an absolutely wonderful, wonderful Blu-ray. Tons of great extras here. You get both versions of the film, by the way. It was changed and tweaked for its 1972 re-release, and that is on here along with the original 1921 version. The transfer is just spectacular. There's a great commentary with Chaplin historian Charles Milland, which is a must listen to at least several times. There's a video essay on Jackie Coogan, and tons of other interviews and deleted scene stuff. I mean, it's a wealth of material. There's even footage of Chaplin conducting his own score, which is wonderful. So it just doesn't get any better. This is absolutely wonderful. Any Chaplin completist would be crazy to not pick this up. The other two Criterion titles are Nagisa Oshima's Death by Hanging, which continues Criterion's tradition of releasing really unbelievably great Japanese New Wave movies. This is from 1968. One of the most influential of the Japanese New Wave films. It is just a devastating political satire that deals with the tensions between Korea and Japan, basically about a Korean guy who survives an execution in Japan, and in turn there's this insane political argument over how to manage it. It is really a brutal and powerful film, especially if you're Japanese or Korean. It's a sledgehammer. And then I think the best of the week. This is my pick of the week. I've been waiting for this for years. Jan Troell, who is still alive, the great Swedish filmmaker. Jan Troell, who still makes movies. Every few years, he'll come out with some cool little meditative thing starring Max von Sydow. But his masterpieces are the two films, The Emigrants and The New Land. They are absolute masterpieces. Together, they constitute about 5, 6, almost 7 hours of movie. This is great stuff. This is like 6.5 hours of just awesome Swedish drama. Just they've come to the United States to be farmers, and it's 19th century hell, and they just fight through it, and it is wonderful. Max von Sydow and Liv Ullmann have never been better. These are some of the greatest films ever made. Some of the best performances ever, some of the best directing ever, all on one fantastic Blu-ray edition. The Emigrants and the New Land. It is so beautifully photographed. You will weep from beginning frame to end frame. It's beyond belief how good these films are. I've been waiting for these for years. There's tons of great stuff on here. There's a great conversation between Jan Troell and Peter Cowie, who's done a lot of commentaries for Criterion, and that's relatively new. There's also a new interview with Liv Ullmann, and some fantastic documentary stuff on the making of the films, which is mind-boggling. You wind up being so much more impressed, but watch that stuff after you've seen the films. So that said, there you go. The Emigrants in the New Land by Jan Troell. Long overdue. Finally on Blu-ray. I'm probably going to sit down and watch the entire 6.5 some odd hour thing, maybe 4 or 5 times over the next week. That's
4 or 5 times over the next week.
Yeah.
You'll watch a 6-hour film 5 times.
Yeah, I'll do it.
All 6 hours of it.
Yeah.
Not even like by the 5th time. You fast forward to your favorite scenes, or just watch the whole thing again?
I'll stop to feed my daughter, and
I don't think you should even do that.
No, maybe not. She'll appreciate it one day. She will. She'll suffer for my art, or for Jan Troell's art.
Well, yeah. She won't suffer because the city will take your daughter away from you and give her to an actual family. Okay, so wait, here's the thing.
Yeah.
When you're young, you like stupid movies. They seem really cool, but then when you grow up, they're just the worst. When I was a kid, I thought The Car was the greatest movie I'd ever seen in the history of the world. It's about a car possessed by the devil.
Nice.
And it's not done out of irony or humor. It's James Brolin plays a small town sheriff, and a car who, by the way, used to honk its horn like this. And so whenever you hear that horn, the car was coming.
You know what the car was? It was a Lincoln Continental, but it was tricked out. It was all
tricked out. It was awesome.
It was I have a story about this, but finish up.
So The Car, which I absolutely loved, especially for some reason, I thought that the guy at the opening scene who was hitchhiking, who had the tuba, for some reason I had it in my head that was Billy Crystal, but it is not. Anyway, so The Car is basically Jaws with a car, and I loved this film when I was a kid, and then I rewatched it, and it's terrible, but I do like it because it is nostalgia city for someone like myself. So The Car, especially, you know what? It's a Scream Factory did a good job with the Blu-ray. New interviews with the director Elliot Silverstein and a couple of the actors, TV spots, radio spots, stills galleries are always useless. But I love The Car. If you want to see just, look at the girl on the cover art. Yeah. Look at the girl in the corner. It looks like a Mad Magazine illustration.
So
I'm sorry, I think this movie's awesome, except the fact that it sucks.
So here's my story on The Car. The first time when I was a kid, the first time I ever took the Universal Studios tour was when they were posting The Car. It was right when the thing was being finished, and I still remember to this day. The only thing that I remember about that idiotic tour was that there was a point at which our tour guide, and I guess back then the scripts were not as structured and not as firm. You know, now pretty much those guys, you have to memorize every single joke and twist and turn in that stupid tour guide script. But at the time, they had a little more latitude to just kind of go, off the reservation. And I remember the guy, he was taking us on the tour, and he goes, and this hill over here, there's a movie coming up that they just finished shooting called The Car. It's about a car possessed by the devil. And this is where the car goes off the edge, and in the end, you see the devil's face in the flames.
I know, it's awesome.
Yeah, and it's hysterical. And he's telling us this, and he's like, and you could tell he recently saw it as an employee of Universal and thoroughly hated it. And here he is bad-mouthing the studio's film on the tour. I thought it was hysterical. And I was a kid, and I remember thinking, should you be doing this? This is probably not the right thing. Anyway.
Well, you know what? That man had no taste in movies because The Car is awesome. Anyway, speaking of awesome, the completely forgotten yet needs to be rediscovered No Way Out. This is one of the best thrillers of the 70s. This is the movie that really established Kevin Costner as a leading man. It also includes Gene Hackman, who, of course, is my all-time favorite actor in the whole world, and the crazy, wacky Sean Young, and Will Patton, who was a big actor back then in the 80s and 90s. Love him. Maurice Jarre. It's one of Maurice Jarre's only synth scores that I can actually handle, because I love Maurice Jarre when he does orchestral. I hate Maurice Jarre when he does synth stuff. But this is Roger Donaldson, by far his best film. I think this thing is great. It's a Cold War film, so it might seem a little bit dated, but it's got a great twist.
You don't like the synth score for Witness? Pretty great.
Yeah, I guess I do.
Yeah. Come on, give it up.
You have to admit that. Come on, Jarre's orchestral scores were all great. But when he did like Dreamscape or all those synth scores, they're just terrible.
Yeah,
they all sound interchangeable.
Yeah, true.
Anyway, I think this film is great. It's got an audio commentary with Roger Donaldson. The transfer is okay. It's fine. Shout Factory again, doing the best they can. I don't know what elements they use, but the transfer is fine. The audio commentary is good. That's the only extra here. But No Way Out is a great thriller. It's one of my favorite thrillers of the 80s. And it's, it's just a little bit pulpy, a little bit noirish, but yet it's just a lot of fun. And it's very intense. And I do highly recommend No Way Out. And we also have My Science Project. Now, My Science Project, that was a movie from the mid-'80s. And it was one of those, Back to the Future type ripoff movies. Got a lot of these when back in the day, it was the one with Kelly LeBrock,
oh yeah.
What was the one with Kelly LeBrock? It was 2 words. Don't stop the recording. 2 words. Kelly LeBrock, Science Buddies or something, Weird Science.
Weird Science. Thank you. I was going to say Bite Me, but that's
what it was called. Bite Me.
Yeah.
Weird
Science.
That's a good way. Anyway, My Science Project, not that great. It does feature Dennis.
There was also Real Genius with Val Kilmer.
Yes.
That's why I always get confused, because there's My Science Project and Real Genius and Weird Science, and the two had science and the one had genius, and it got very confusing.
It was all about high school students who get into these weird technological hijinks.
Yeah.
And this one has this kid played by John Stockwell. If he does not come up with a science project, his teacher, played by Dennis Hopper, is going to flunk him. So he winds up going into some military base junkyard and winds up with some crazy gizmo that changes the world and bends time and destroys things and whatever. And this is just a really silly, mid '80s cheesy, kind of funny in a stupid way comedies. My Science Project. Yeah, your parents probably saw this when it came out. The Guardian is, look, William Friedkin, he is a great director. He directed some amazing films. The guy directed a, Best Picture Oscar winner. Can't beat that. By the way, that's the French Connection. But The Guardian, he was starting to slip a little bit. This is from 1990, and it's about this couple, and they have this live-in babysitter. But it turns out, of course, the babysitter is really freaky. Stars Kerry Lowell, who famously had a very long relationship with Richard Gere, and Jenny Seagrove, and a couple other people. It's okay. The Guardian, look, Friedkin can definitely turn the screws. If you give this material to somebody else, it'd be way cheesier, but I just think this is one of Friedkin's lesser efforts. And David Keith and Kathy Moriarty star in White of the Eye. I could not get through all of this because it's really not that great. Anyway, so Kathy Moriarty plays this woman. She's a twisted killer on the loose in Arizona, and he tortures and dissects all the victims.
Oh, that's enough. Thank you.
And,
yeah, enough.
And
enough.
This is just silly stuff. Although I have to say that Scream Factory, as is their wont, they did a great job on the Blu-ray. There's a new high-definition transfer, but again, this is an old film, so this is not quite something that is going to really benefit from the Blu-ray treatment, but you do have that, and you've got audio commentary from David. He's the director. I don't know if it's Camel or Camel.
Yeah. And
interview with the Steadicam operator, which is just really weird. Because look, there were some good shots in this thing, some good, exciting, thrillery type shots,
but not enough for the Steadicam.
But it is weird. Like I've never seen this on the back of a DVD box. Interview with Steadicam operator Larry McConkey.
Weird.
God love him, but again, not really worth the effort.
All right, so here's some interesting stuff. First of all, there's a really weird 6-film collection, Tales from the Prison Yard, that Mill Creek has released, and this is so odd to me that they would even do this. I guess, these compilation multi-film collections are. I guess that there's some kind of science to it, but anyway, they went and they clearly said, why don't we got a bunch of movies that nobody's ever going to want to watch. Why don't we throw The Last Detail on there, which is a real movie with Jack Nicholson and absolutely legitimate, and directed by Hal Ashby. It's a fantastic movie. Why don't we throw that on there and then just tack on 5 other movies that nobody would ever even think to watch ever in their lives? And these are the other films. The Valachi Papers with Charles Bronson, which is, it's a mafia thing, but totally forgotten. And then the others are just, why even bother? There's City of Fear, Escape from San Quentin, Cell 2455, Death Row, and Convicted. And Convicted, it's not terrible. It's got Broderick Crawford and Glenn Ford in it, directed by Henry Levin, who was, a good kind of programmer guy back in the day. But it just, otherwise, this is just, well, why don't I just get The Last Detail and forget about the other 5? You got to price this right. Anyway, so that's a little... That's one of those multi-film deals. And then we've got one of my all-time favorite exploitation films, The Brain That Wouldn't Die from Scream Factory, the division of Shout Factory. The Brain That Wouldn't Die was one of the movies that we focused on when Ray Green and I did our little documentary, Schlock, The Secret History of American Movies, a million years ago. The Brain That Wouldn't Die is essentially kind of a Frankenstein-ish movie, but it's one of the legendary exploitation films of all time because it was made for next to no money, and it deals with a lot of themes that sort of link the Frankenstein 1930s period to what's going on in the 50s and 60s, the post-nuclear thing, and all of the other exploitation horror stuff that's happening in the 60s in particular. Basically, what happens is that this guy, he's your usual mad scientist guy. His girlfriend would have otherwise died in a car accident, but he will not give up. So he takes her head, which has been sliced off in the accident, and he keeps her alive. He keeps her head alive so that he can go find a new body for her. And he's out, and he becomes kind of a psychopath as he goes out to try to kill the perfect girl whose body will become the new body for his beloved.
By the way, just watch the Mystery Science Theater version of this.
It's a little bit better. Eyes Without a Face, the famous French film, is similar in that respect. You know, mad scientist who's trying to get a new face for his disfigured daughter. This is not a new theme. This has been around forever, but the way that it's treated here is really, really fascinating, and it speaks to a lot of interesting zeitgeistal social trends in the 1960s. It's a great, great film. Really, really fascinating, and one of the most interesting of the American International AIP Sam Markoff produced films of the era. So, The Brain That Wouldn't Die, in a beautiful, beautiful new transfer onto Blu-ray from Scream Factory, courtesy of a license from MGM. So, thank you, MGM, for letting loose and letting the Scream Factory, Shout Factory people just go to town on this. And then from the exploitation to blaxploitation, we've got some great blaxploitation films from two different companies this week. One of them from Arrow, Pam Grier in Sheba Baby. This is one of these new hybrid DVD Blu-ray, amazingly well done Arrow releases. Tons and tons of special features here, like on a Criterion level. Audio commentary with the screenwriter, audio commentary with the webmaster of WilliamGirdler.com, new interview with David Sheldon, the screenwriter. It's really, really interesting. William Girdler, of course, is the director of the film. And this came on the heels of Coffee and Foxy Brown. This was Pam Grier's this is her really just saying, I'm really here to stay. I am not a flash in the pan, and she's basically playing a female Shaft. She's a private eye in Chicago, and this is one of the most popular blaxploitation films of all time. Sheba Baby is really, really, really good. It is sharp, it is well written, and Pam Grier is to die for in this movie. On the male end of things, we have a couple from Olive, Fred Williamson and Jim Brown. Fred Williamson, of course, in Black Caesar, which is probably one of the most iconic Larry Cohen films of the day. You know, Larry Cohen really wrote and directed a lot of this stuff, and kind of interesting. This sort of really lovably schlubby Jewish guy wrote and directed all these blaxploitation films. But Black Caesar is sort of Scarface, with Fred Williamson, and a black guy basically coming up from the bottom and becoming big boss and big gangster, and it all sort of it's got some really, really interesting overtones about the racial politics of the era, and it's the scene where he drives the car down the sidewalk, pretty great, especially for the day and with such a small a budget, and of course an amazing score of James Brown music. It's beyond belief how great it is. Slaughter stars Jim Brown and has one of the all-time great taglines, which I'm so thrilled that they actually put onto the cover of the Blu-ray. Mark, read the tagline. It says, Jim Brown, Slaughter. What's the tagline?
My glasses. It's not only his name, it's his business.
That's so awesome. Anyway, this is directed by Jack Starrett, who also did Cleopatra Jones, and Jim Brown plays a former Vietnam Green Beret captain who is out for vengeance. His parents were killed by this mobster played by Rip Torn, and he's out to unleash hell on Rip Torn. And it's great. Rip Torn is just perfect for something like this. Rip Torn, he's always been kind of a larger than life.
Rip Torn?
Been a larger than life actor for a long time, and
he's still around, right?
He did a lot. Well, he's the one that takes this away from just being kind of an exploitation film. He really gives it an added amount of punch. So that's a lot of fun.
Rip Torn is 85 years old. He's still around.
Yeah, and he still doesn't have an Oscar. And you know what? We got a ton of Olive titles here that I want to go through. A lot of this is really worth talking about. But this is, Olive releases. They license a lot of stuff from 20th and MGM and other libraries, and this is stuff that has never been on Blu-ray before. And there's some great kind of cult and fringe stuff here, and you should really seek this out. Olive does a wonderful, wonderful job with this. John Malkovich and Ann Magnuson in Making Mr. Right, as long as we're speaking about the, Brain That Wouldn't Die and Frankenstein-y things. This is just a really cool Susan Seidelman movie from the 1980s that doesn't get enough credit, really. Malkovich, in one of his most interesting roles ever, is this weird, eccentric scientist who has to build a robot astronaut, and it winds up becoming this weird kind of Pygmalion-ish endeavor for him, and it's really an interesting allegory. And it gets in all of those things that robot movies usually do. Where does the human end and the mechanical begin? But it's great performances by Ann Magnuson, who, whatever happened to her?
I know.
And Malkovich. Billy Crystal's homage to the great Borscht Belt comics of yesteryear. He directed this, and he wrote it, and he stars in it. Mr. Saturday Night, which is also a film that I don't think gets enough credit. It's got a little bit of horrible latex old age work later on in the movie, but really wonderful, wonderful movie. And of course, he wrote this along with Lowell Gantz and Babaloo Mandel, who were doing everything at that time. They were just the screenwriting duo, like the dream. I don't know where they went either. But it really, really great. I think this film has a wonderful nostalgic soul, and these guys just don't exist anymore. That whole Borscht Belt era, it's gone. Romance and Cigarettes, directed by John Turturro, with a great cast. Susan Sarandon, Kate Winslet, James Gandolfini. John Turturro, really a much more interesting director than anybody's ever given him credit for. He wrote and directed this. And he really has, he pushes the envelopes, or the envelope, I should say. Really a kind of an unusual kind of quasi-musical drama. It's just him getting, his demons out and all of his weird imagination and onto the screen. And I just hope he directs more, because I miss that. Smooth Talk got a lot of controversy at the time. Treat Williams and Laura Dern in a movie that touched on some, I don't know if this would. Do you remember the controversy over this, when this was like a really big deal, because it dealt with sort of pedophilia, child molestation issues, and people were very, very uncomfortable about it. And I'm not sure this would be that big of a deal anymore.
No,
I mean, the issues are still the issues, but I think
sure.
in the wake of something like Spotlight, that you can sort of tackle these subjects without people squirming in their seats anymore.
I think something like this movie would seem tame.
Yeah, probably. Well, anyway.
Because again, it was low budget, and it wasn't,
Based on a short story by Joyce Carol Oates, directed by Joyce Chopra. I don't know where she's gone. That's just weird. Anyway, but it's it's certainly let me put it this way. It's not as good as Kubrick's Lolita, but it's a similar story that is a better version of Lolita than the remake of Lolita, which Adrian Lyne totally bonked. Mad Dog Time. Oh my gosh. Mark, did you ever see Mad Dog Time?
I did.
Oh my gosh. This is the most weird, fringy, eccentric, unusual movie. And I remember thinking at the time, I hate this movie. And yet at the same time, I kind of like it.
Yeah, come on. Give it up.
It's here's the deal. Great cast. Everybody is in this movie. And you look at this and you go, Ellen Barkin, Gabriel Byrne, Jeff Goldblum, Diane Lane, Richard Dreyfuss. Who's this guy directing them, this Larry Bishop? What are they doing in this movie by Larry? I've never heard of Larry Bishop. And then you research a little and you go, oh, Joey Bishop's kid. That's what it is. It's a whole kind of inherited Rat Pack deal. And that's why you wind up with certain people from the Rat Pack era who show up in the film. And there's a number of those kinds of Rat Packy cameos in here, and you go, I get it. Okay, so now it makes sense. Anyway, this thing is basically kind of a gangster comedy that takes place in an alternate universe, which it states from the outset that it doesn't take place in our world or our universe. It's very weird, but
but the thing is that in the movie, someone's about to be released from a mental hospital.
Yes.
So that already sets your expectations.
True.
That this is going to be a weird little funky spoof.
Yes. Well, Richard Dreyfuss, he comes out of a mental hospital and goes back to his gangster world to take back power from those who took it from him. And it's Jeff Goldblum is great and Diane Lane is great, and I mean Richard Dreyfuss is a lot of fun, but it's really off the wall. It's really very fringy and weird, and written and directed by Larry Bishop, who has not done anything of any note since. But it's there it is. Prick Up Your Ears, absolute must-see film. Prick Up Your Ears is an amazing movie, directed by Stephen Frears back in 1987, and it is basically the true story of the relationship between playwright Joe Orton, played by Gary Oldman, and his mentor, played by Alfred Molina, and it's not a comfortable story. I mean, it's a really turbulent, rough watch, and Frears just directs the daylights out of this. This is back when he was making those grittier films like My Beautiful Laundrette and Sammy and Rosie Get Laid, and he just kills it here. It's just a beautifully told story, but with all kinds of really difficult, rough edges. And it's absolute must-have on Blu-ray if you are any kind of a Frears completist, or if you love Alfred Molina and Gary Oldman, who just both absolutely rip it up in there. 8 Men Out is on Blu-ray, in case you didn't know that. This is one of John Sayles' best films ever. The story of the White Sox scandal, with a great cast that includes John Cusack and Charlie Sheen and Christopher Lloyd and David Strathern and D.B. Sweeney, all of them doing some of their best work ever. This is back when John Sayles was making great movies every single year. And a lot of people think this is the best baseball movie ever made. I don't know, Mark, how do you feel about 8 Men Out?
I love 8 Men Out. It's one of the best films made about baseball.
There you go.
It's a movie about a national tragedy, and it's got a great cast. This is back when John Sayles was in his complete heyday. I mean, he's lost it now. I don't know what the hell this guy's doing. He's out of his mind now. But back then he was great.
What I love about this is he takes something that's a very academic narrative, and he manages to sort of elevate each and every individual character and sort of carry the whole. I mean, it's a very complicated story. It warrants a documentary, but somehow he really personalizes all these relationships and all these issues, and
part of the tragedy,
Shoeless Joe, and it's really great.
Well, part of the tragedy is that a lot of these guys were really uneducated. Shoeless Joe could not even sign his name.
I know.
He signed his name
in the film. It's an X when they ask him to sign. Yes. He signs it with an X. I mean, it's so
you really feel bad for some of these guys. They
were
really some of them. Yes, some of them were corrupt and they wanted the money and whatnot. But some of them were just they just wound up just going along with what the other guys were doing because they were so uneducated.
Yep. And then Impromptu was another movie that I was particularly fond of. James Lapine, the stage director, this is a 1991 film. It was one of the last it was part of right near the end of the Orion moment, when they were winning Best Pictures and Dances with Wolves and
Dances with Wolves, which won it over Goodfellas.
Yeah,
why is that?
I don't know. But then they also, Silence of the Lambs was an Orion film. I mean, they were it.
Can I say that Silence of the Lambs is a great film, except for the end?
Impromptu is the story of the relationship.
Wade's not listening.
No, I'm not. Impromptu is the story of the relationship between the composer Chopin and the famous writer, who we often think was a man if you just look at the name, but George Sand was in fact a woman. And George Sand here is played by Judy Davis. George Sand was, lived up to the male name because she was very much a tomboy, rode horses and pants and smoked cigars and the whole thing.
She rode pants?
But she was madly in love with Chopin, who is here played by Hugh Grant, who doesn't do a very good French accent, but he's otherwise memorable. But it's a great story. It deserves to be told better and told again, frankly. But Judy Davis and Hugh Grant are still there's a great chemistry here. Julian Sands even shows up to kind of round it out because he was like the kooky British actor for a moment there in the 1980s and 90s. Here he plays Franz Liszt, and he does it beautifully because Liszt was like the dude at the time as far as composers. And so that's a nice little thing. Jenny Bevan, the great costume designer, does a killer job. Emma Thompson also shows up a little bit in this thing. It's a really good film from the early 90s and well worth rediscovering. And then a movie that a friend of ours actually was an executive producer on, and I'm not going to say anything else about it, but Heartbreakers with Sigourney Weaver, Jennifer Love Hewitt, and Gene Hackman is not a very good movie, but Gene Hackman is a riot in this movie. He is absolutely hilarious. You know who I'm talking about, who executive produced this movie, right?
No.
You really? You don't?
I do not.
You do not know that you know an executive producer on this movie. Here, I'm going to point out the name on the back.
My glasses on. Really?
You have no idea.
How did she wind up on that? Well, what has she done since, by the way? Let's see. Let's Google her.
I'm not going to go any further. Anyway, it almost kind of gives it away. So, anyway, no, Heartbreakers, Sigourney Weaver and Jennifer Love Hewitt play a mother and daughter con artist, and they're trying to, rip off Gene Hackman, who is... a tobacco tycoon who chain smokes like no one's business, and he hacks and he's coughing, and he's just an absolute riot. He's so unbelievably funny. It's a silly, stupid movie, but it's worth watching just because Hackman is such an absolute riot. Also, a few other decent people show up in here. Ray Liotta in a supporting part. Good music by John Debney. Dean Semler, who just shot the new Mad Max film, does a pretty good job with the cinematography, kind of phoning it in. But
okay,
anyway.
So she did 16 Blocks. He was an EP on 16 Blocks.
Yes.
That was the Richard Donner film with
Yep.
Bruce Willis.
Yep.
Didn't work for 9 years, or just scuffled trying to get projects done for 9 years. Then she wound up just taking producer credits.
Yep.
On Into the Grizzly Maze.
Yep.
With James Marsden and Thomas Jane. Harbinger Down. This means nothing to our listeners.
No, it doesn't.
With Lance Henriksen. And by the way, let me just say something. See this photo of her? This must have been that must have been taken 15 years ago.
Probably.
That's what she looked like when I knew her.
Uh-huh. Anyway, she's got a kid now too. I don't know if you
really?
Knew that. Yeah, a little girl.
How do you know? Do you talk to her?
I actually don't. But when a certain composer friend of ours who has not lost touch with anybody, when he was in town, he did. So it's kind of funny.
So is she married or just has a kid?
Yeah, absolutely.
Married with a kid.
Yep.
Wow.
All right, that's it. So we are. That's it for this week, and
we wasted 3 minutes talking about somebody.
Yes, we did.
Whose name we didn't even say.
All right, so we're done, and next week it's Academy Award time. I don't know if we're going to get a show in before the Oscars, but otherwise we'll do a show after the Oscars and do a little wrap up. All right, everybody, thanks for being here. We'll see you next week.